Hello and welcome back, everybody, to the DanJohnUniversity.com podcast. I'm Dan John. This is episode number 205. As always, it's a listener-driven podcast. I answer your questions, so if you have questions, just send them to the podcast, and the address is podcast@DanJohnUniversity.com. I do my best to answer each and every question. This week is kind of a fine, nice mix of things. As I'm beginning today, in my time, this podcast will come out a little while from now, but we're starting the Inner Circle again. And if you ever want to become a member of the Dan John Inner Circle, just sign up at danjohninnercircle.com. It was kind of fun this week. I do a lot of one-on-one calls, and the advice I gave a member of the Inner Circle was, he was asking me a good question about, how you prepare yourself as a coach. And, obviously, how do you prepare yourself as a coach? I think first you need to know the game well. You need to know the game or sport well enough to be able to really find out what the fundamental truths, not just the three keys, but you need to understand in very foundational way the keys to the sport, the keys to the game, the things that repeat themselves from beginner to master. You need to be able to be a little bit flexible about the realities of the situation you're in, which is very difficult. The example I usually use is when I work with dads who want their 12-year-old son to do something that they see someone doing in a National Football League. It's really hard. There's a lot of physical development. There's a lot of mental and emotional development it takes to do some of those things. From there, I think you need to understand the history of certain things. You need to have to organize practice. You need to understand how to organize games. You need checklists, tons of checklists. I used to have an assistant coach, Steve Mond, whose job it was at every team meeting to raise his hand and say, "Coach, what time does the bus leave?" And we'd all laugh, and I'd repeat it for the 23rd time, because those are the kind of things that fall apart. To move on from there, I have two suggestions, and this was something I shared with my friend on the Inner Circle. The first one is, I think it does help, and I don't know what the sport you're coaching or the game you're playing or what it is, but sometimes I think it really helps to step back, find a sport or game that's close, and play that game, coach that game too, so you can really develop those other odd qualities. The triangle offense in professional basketball here in the United States, is basically the same. If you watch Ted Lasso, you can watch the whole thing, as the triangle offense in soccer football. There's some things you can do in rugby and American football that carry over very well. Those sometimes are too close. In my own experience as an athlete, as a young athlete, I played American football, and then I wrestled, and then in the spring I did the discus throw, the hurdles, and honestly sometimes I ran in relays. Not really great, but I ran. And sometimes I threw the shot if we needed points, and I did that all through my collegiate career too. And in the summer, I played in basketball leagues and soccer football leagues. And I always felt like those sports just kept, kind of whirling upward in how I understood how to play the sports. Wrestling, the hurdles are really a great thing for an American football player to do. It's, having the barriers in front of you, the hurdles, are very helpful. They teach you how to be fast, but how to be fast under control. And then from there, I think there's some games that a person can play, and this is where we got to the place with the coach on the Inner Circle. And I talked about, and I have them right here, I've got a nice wooden tic-tac-toe board here. And if you can't figure out tic-tac-toe within, 20 games, maybe we shouldn't go too far with your career. Just watch War Games for the example, movie with Matthew Broderick. I also think checkers is another great game to play. I was in England not long ago, and I mispronounced the word. And then 5 different people explained to me how to say the name of what they call checkers there. Drafts, droughts, and I swear they all were saying the same word, but pronounced a little bit differently. Chess is a good game. It teaches you a lot of forward progress and how powerful a good defense can be. All right. Of course, the master game over here is my chess, and I have that wonderful chessboard here. Chess teaches you that you always have options. But another game I'm a big fan of for coaches is Connect 4. And the reason I like Connect 4 is every time the disc drops, the game changes. And I think that sometimes that's those skill sets from those fun games teach you some things, reinforce some things that make you think better as you coach. Now, if you're your own athlete, sometimes the answer just doesn't sound right to you now, but when you're older, it's gonna make perfect sense. I was just talking today about when I was 14, and I decided that 50 years from then, which was basically, a year, 2 years ago, I figured out that if all I did was squat, snatch, and clean and press, I would cover all the exercises necessary. Well, on this upcoming trip I'm going to be on, I'm going to take a kettlebell and I'm going to do snatches with the kettlebell and clean and presses with it. A little bit different than the rite of passage, but the same basic concept. And I'll report on it. If it works, I'll report on it. But what's nice about what I'm trying to say is that sometimes the thinking process that you have today, the foundations might stay for 5 years, a decade, decades, but little things will change just a little bit. The rules change in games sometimes. New equipment comes along, new ideas come along, and you always want to be in a place that you can move with that. And that's why I think the inner circle is so good, is that it gives me a chance to talk with people in a group, intentional community, and we get to bounce ideas off each other. And I'm always amazed how the fundamentals, the basics are always true. So thank you. That was just a good way to start. Well, this is a fun question to begin. It's a short question. In fact, we got a lot of good short questions today that are easy to answer for me. Well, okay, Doug asks this. I have a question about meshing cluster sets with easy strength. It's interesting you say that, Doug, because I've already done that for you in a sense, but let's keep going. Given the low volume 2x5, 3x3, could a cluster approach be used, say for a 2x5 day, 2 sets of 5, using 20 to 30 seconds rest between reps, and then 2 to 3 minimum rest between sets? So what he's trying to say, and you're doing just fine, is that can you completely change the way you look at a set of 5? And I think there is. I wrote an article for T-Nation years ago on the 5x5 approach, which, it was interesting because I think at the time I only had 5 or 6 answers to what is a 5x5. And the moment I wrote the article, somebody said, isn't it obvious? And then come up with this completely different way of doing 5 sets of 5. We moved away from 5 sets of 5 with my throwers years ago, but we still kept the same thing. We did a set of 2, a set of 3, a set of 5, another set of 2, 3, 5, 2, 3. So it's very close to what you're saying, Doug. The idea is that 5 sets of 5 would, especially with the strength some of my throwers have, it would just really burn them up. But if we did a set of 2, rested a little bit like you recommend, do a set of 3, rest a little bit, get that hard set of 5, well, by the way, there's a good 2 sets of 5 day for you, you can stay a little fresher and push that 2 sets of 5 longer and longer. You also mentioned in the fall, later in the question here, the 3x3 idea. I guess you could go for a set of 3. You could do a set of 1 and then 2. 1, 2, so it would be 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. If you're in a place, especially if you're competing as a lifter or maybe even strongman, where you really need to hone in on just being really strong, this might be a nice approach. Do I recommend it for everybody? I don't know. Let's look at your final part. And let's see if that gives us the idea why. Assuming a few warm-up or ramp sets would be needed to get to the working weight. Not sure if this idea would generate too much central nervous system fatigue are too tough on the joints. And that's what the issue might be, because if you do this 1-2, 1-2, 1-2 idea, you're going to be able to handle a lot more load on the bar, ideally, hopefully. But it might just be the thing if you're just a power athlete, if you're just an Olympic lifter or power lifter, I don't know who else would come to mind right now, you're going to be okay because that's your sport. But it might be an issue if you use the weight room to support your sport or game. Doug, that's a good question. And the other day I signed a copy of my book, Easy Strength Omnibook, available at danjohnuniversity.com/bookstore. And he had it printed out, and it was this thick, and copied on both sides of the pages. And I thought to myself, wow, I don't know what else I can say about it. But honestly, Doug, to me, your question would make a good additional chapter. And even though I probably won't write it, I'm going to do my best to remember this, because that's good, Doug. That's a good insight. Again, I would test it out a little bit before I would do that, say 5 days a week. If you do feel yourself getting, a little, when I overtrain, I get a little bit irritable, a little crotchety, if you will. So if that's an issue, I would, maybe go back to the traditional template. But for a short period of time, that's a really good idea. Thank you, Doug. We have a question from Andrew. I'm a middle football coach at a small school in Ohio. I was wondering if you could provide me with some advice on creating a summer strength training program for my athletes. We lift 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and have access to power racks, bar, bench, barbells, hex bar, dumbbells, as well as a glute ham and a lat pull machine. We also do conditioning after we lift and do core. In the past, I had my athletes, pardon me, and this is where I would disagree with you, but I had my athletes do an upper-lower split training program. I would like to learn a better way to train. Thank you for all you do. Well, I can see the issue you have because you got those 2 back-to-back days. Just a thought I had. And folks, this is a very specific question with specific issues, but I think there's something you can learn from this. If you find yourself in a situation where, and for example, I do this with some of the men I work with who are weekend warriors. I said men specifically because I don't necessarily work with a lot of women who have the same issue, but this certainly could be true. Is that some people have plenty of time to train on Saturday and Sunday, but they can only get one workout in other day of the week, like a Wednesday or something like that. So when you go back to back, 2 hard days back to back, I think it makes sense to split things up. Now, what I generally do is I ask them to take a technique day. I'm thinking about an Olympic lifter. So maybe Saturday, a heavy total in the snatch, clean and jerk, front squat, maybe even press, the Dave Turner's program. Sunday would be the power day, power snatch, power clean, push jerk, back squat. Wednesday, so those are 2 hard days. Wednesday in the middle of the week, I would suggest if you're an Olympic lifter, you probably squat snatch, because it's hard to make progress in the squat snatch just doing it 1 day a week, in my experience. My thought is this, is that I would suggest to you, as best you can, is make Monday a total body day. If you are doing something like Jim Wendler's 531, which by the way is very good for this age, or the Southwood program, power clean, military, front squat, bench press, doing all 4 of those big lifts 1 day a week might be pretty good. And then on the Wednesday or Thursday, I don't think it matters, is that you would cut those in half. It's pretty natural. I just see the power clean and the military press working together. And then the other day, however you work on it, it doesn't matter, the front squat bench press day. On that Wednesday, Thursday, so Monday is an everything day. So it's a hard day. And if you're doing lots of exercises for 5x5, it's a really long day. So just be a little bit careful on that. But it's okay because it's the off season. And it's okay to get a little tired in the off season and to work, some different qualities. Let's just say, just because it's in my head, Wednesday will be the Power Clean Military Day. Well, that would be a really good day. I notice you have some other equipment in here. That'd be a good day to do the extra lower back work, the extra ab work, maybe whatever you have. Heck, even trap bar deadlifts would be interesting on that day. Thursday, because it's front squat and bench press, that might be really a good day to just keep running with it and turn that into a bit more of a hypertrophy bodybuilding day. So, if this is how we're going to do this, and it's not bad, Monday is an everything day. Wednesday, more Olympic lifting with support movements. Thursday, more powerlifting and support it with whatever's appropriate. Now, you're going to have space issues with a good off-season program. Space you have a lot of athletes, not a lot of equipment. So you might want to put yourself, break it out somehow. I don't have a wristband on me. That one I had rotted off me. But if you have a wristband, is that maybe you could have just different colored wristbands, and you could have black wristband group on Monday, Wednesday. You could work it out. On Wednesday, the black wristband group does abdominal work, suitcase carries, and glute ham raise, whatever. The blue group does curls, tricep extensions. The yellow group does lat pull downs, pull ups, whatever. So during as you're going through the workout, you could probably break it out a little bit by setting groups around. I'm a big fan of wristbands. They're very, very inexpensive, but it's very easy to organize things. So you could also just say, okay, the blue wrist group, power clean time, you've got 15 minutes. Red wristband group, you've got, it's military press, you've got 15 minutes. Yellow and aquamarine or whatever, you guys do your auxiliary lifts. I like to see a weight room moving constantly. If you read my work, when I was a high school strength coach, one of the things we did a lot of was very organized. We called them conga lines, dun, 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 dun. So one of my favorite things to do was have the athletes go through. So you would start off by doing front squat. You would then do bench press. You would then do hurdle walkovers. You put the hurdles in there, and they have to walk over the hurdles, which is wonderful. They only had to go through one time, but you have 8 or 9 athletes going through it. Next to the hurdle walkover, you could have them do bear crawls, which is wonderful. I also put tumbling mats in my weight room so they could do shoulder rolls and cartwheels, which is an amazing trainer. And then the next station would be power curl, power clean, power snatch, whatever's appropriate, your hex bar deadlift. So let's just say they go 5 front squat, 5 bench, hurdles, bear crawl, 5 power clean, 4 front squat, 4 bench, 4 power clean, 3, 3, 2, 2, 1, 1. That's only 15 reps, but the entire team is all moving at once. I love that. I had 7 front squat stations, 7 bench stations, and I'd set up 7 platforms. So we could get, right there, easily fit 35 athletes at once, and it was fine to go even more. The other thing I learned this from my 9th grade coaches is just have, when you're going to do big group stuff, have very standardized loads. So, with our place, let's say, it could be as light as, even just the empty bar at the first station. You could go 45, 65, 85, 95, especially if it's a freshman group. That's a very good lift. 115, 135, and then whatever's appropriate, 165, 185, whatever's appropriate for the strongest group. And you just stick with basic weights, because what you're trying to do is get the volume of athletes going through. It's remarkable to watch. I still do that with the groups I train. and it's a great way to get things done. I know I didn't do a great job answering this question because there's so many variables, but I really like this question, and I hope it helped at some level. Let me know how it goes. Andrew, if you have more questions, email me at the podcast, and I can, and maybe I can show you some of the ideas that I used at the high schools I've worked at, okay? Thank you. We've got a question from Owen. Owen. I'm 7 weeks out from doing my first half Ironman triathlon. Training's going well. I've managed to avoid injury and illness, and I've been making steady progress over the last 5 months. That's great. Apart from the running, cycling, and swimming, oh, this is blueberry juice, by the way. Sadly, it's not wine. I've done, shock horror, 0 strength training while preparing for this triathlon. I know how beneficial it would be, but I have no idea how to program the strength stuff while doing everything else. How do you suggest I remedy this next season? My A race next year will be the Ironman Wales in September. After reading your Omni book, I'm sure easy strength, that was my answer, is the answer, but just thought I'd run it by you first. Thanks for your help and advice over the years. It's life-changing stuff that I happily pass on to friends, family, and colleagues. Well, if you remember, and if you read the Easy Strength, Owen, you'll notice that I get the roots of it from Percy Cerutty, the great Australian coach, and I think he was wonderful. A friend of mine is writing a new biography of him. I have his books up here on the shelves, Training with Cerutty right there, and then around the house and through there, I've got all of his reprinted books that have come out in the last few years. And he recommended, I mean, I can summarize everything I do in the weight room with this, 2-3-5 rule that I've been joking about at workshops. 2-3-5 days a week. You pick 2-3-5 exercises. You do 2-3-5 sets of 2-3-5 reps. And there you go. For Percy, his athletes did deadlift, bench press, a swing variation. It's not wouldn't be recognizable by a modern kettlebeller, but it was a swing, a curl variation, and then either sit-ups or pull-ups, kind of depending on what one of his books you're reading. But I just summarize it as deadlift, press, a curl, an ab movement, and swings. And I just basically told you the whole book-ish. So I would stick in that, just get strong numbers, 2 sets of 5. On the inner circle, I'm working with somebody who wants a fancy program to get a double body weight deadlift. And, the fancy program is, drag some sleds, push a prowler, do some cleans, run hills, and then 2 sets of 5 days a week with the deadlift variation, and just keep practicing that movement until one day you come in the gym on a bet and you pull it. Yeah, I really think for endurance runners, and I would stick with just 2 sets of 5. So just don't make it complex. 2 sets of 5 in a hinge variation, deadlift. 2 sets of 5 in a press variation. I would suggest most people do vertical, but 2 sets of 5 in probably a pull-up for you, chin-up for you, or whatever variation is appropriate. A set of ab wheels, and then something else. Maybe not swings for you, because you're doing triathlons, but something as simple as a suitcase carry. And literally, I just tell people, put it in one hand, walk down, switch hands, and come back. And someone say, how much? Well, when I'm working with 15-year-old girls who are using 85 pounds, it's real hard for me to look at, a male criticizing them using 25 pounds, as I saw online recently, which I thought was hilarious. Today, my discus thrower, God bless her, I mean, you could just see her hands cramping up doing our load and carries. As I'm speaking, we're in the deep off season, and she was using loads that, in each hand, basically about body weight, and doing farmer walks. So you can really load these up, and don't be afraid to. I think there will be a lot of value for you in that stability, I'm going to call it the core, but in that stability, the rigidity of the body as you deal with the different things that are going to hit you on the bike, the run, and the swim. Great question. Boy, I hope it can help you. Yeah, thank you, and good luck. And let me know how that goes. One of my students, her name is very close to your name. She's also a famous triathlete out of, I think it's England, but I'm sure you've bumped into her. So thank you, okay? We got a question from Gary. I'm a 58-year-old man who has been consistent in working out over the past several years. I have been mostly focused on kettlebells, but lately been employing more modalities like barbells and machines, which is fine. Barbells, machines are good. Barbells are good. Dumbbells are good. Kettlebells are good. Suspension trainers are good. Everything is good in the weight room. And if you use it with any level of intelligence, you're going to get great benefits out of it. I have long believed that doing a deadlift session once or twice a week is good practice, regardless of what my focus is at a particular time. Yeah, absolutely. What I am confused about is the dizzying array of deadlift variations that are available. And he gives us a few. Standard, sumo, snatch grip, which I like a lot. Rack, which I like a lot. Deficit, trap bar with the high handle and low handle versions. Jefferson, Romanian. The list goes on and on and on. For someone like me, who is not training for any event, but simply to maintain muscle mass and strength, general health, and to maintain a reasonable appearance as I am mature, can you help me whittle this down? Are the results from these variations meaningfully different for someone like me with such general goals? That's one of those questions I like, because what happens sometimes is, I feel for you, Gary, because I'll look at a book. I just recommended the book Power to the People to somebody the other day, and I said, if Pavel just would have had rack, deadlift, and bench press, no one had ever written another strength training book, because he would have answered all questions right there. Phil Maffetone just came out with a new book on strength, and he recommends Romanian deadlifts and overhead squats, which is just kind of an interesting thing. Really, I guess, in a sense, Gary, you could have taken the same question and asked me about presses. You could have taken the same question and asked me about curl variations, tricep variation. So why do we have so many variations in our weight rooms is because, well, first off, we're all built just a little bit differently. I can't do a hack squat, which is hack means toes. Not Hackenschmidt explained that himself. It means a toe. It's where you have the bar behind you and you deadlift with the weight from behind like this. I can't do them very well at all. And yet a guy like Tom Platz could circle his entire training profile around that exercise. The hack lift, by the way, is a deadlift variation. You didn't mention grips either, because there's a flotilla of grips out there. So for most people, most of the time, the barbell's too low to the ground. So that's why I'm such a big fan for normal people or anybody who's got some miles to do rack deadlifts with the bar stationed either on the patella tendon, an inch below the kneecap, or just above the kneecap, an inch above the kneecap. I like those. Most people can hold a good, tall, solid upper body position. You can see a crappy rep in a moment as a trainer, as a coach, or even in the mirror. And I don't want to say anything is safe, but they're about as safe a variation I know. In my post-deployment program, that is the rack deadlift. The duck deadlift, that's where your heels are together. I liked that a lot when I'd come out of retirement as an Olympic lifter. I had done some of those so that I could get just a little bit stronger in certain places. I was doing the front squats, I was doing the overhead squats, but that exercise seemed to hit an area that I was weak on at the time. Of course, in my career, because my coach loves snatch grip deadlifts, I've done a lot of snatch grip deadlifts. What do you need to do to answer your question? Well, the first thing I would suggest is this. Experiment, and you could probably even just do it in one day. I mean that. Play around with every deadlift variation you can find online. Just try them out. And some of them you'll just go, yeah, that's the stuff. We have this little drill at the gym where you get in a 6-point rock and you put one leg off to the side. We call it a kickstand. And most of the athletes and elite people I work with, when we do that drill, you hear this, that's it. And of course the jokes become, that's the stuff. But what you'll find is that certain deadlifts really, just work well with you. Every time I've done a sumo deadlift, I felt like I needed surgery. The regular conventional mixed grip deadlift, and I never had any issues with it until I did. Now, I never thought I would say this sentence. Now, one of my favorite variations of the deadlift is the deficit deadlift. But I've done a lot of kettlebell swings, and when I do a deficit deadlift, I'm doing a kettlebell swing-ish kind of thing. And as I push my hips back, I'm letting the load go to my heels like it's a hinging for a swing. I have so much more control because there's no ballistics involved, and I can go slower. So I like the deficit deadlift. 40 years ago, I would never do the deficit deadlift because I didn't have the skill set yet. My friend Bill did that great easy strength program with the Jefferson deadlift. And I went in the gym the next day to see if I was missing something because I did them when I was young. Well, I did them older, and I reminded myself why I hated them when I was young. They just burn my knees when I do them. We have a listener out there thinking, I love Jefferson deadlifts. So just remember this. We're all just a bit different enough. And it's not just DNA. It's life experience. It's auto accidents. It's sports. It's how soft your bed is. It's the quality of sleep one night. There's just enough differences so that certain moves hurt Wally, but they don't hurt me. And the opposite is true too. In my perfect training program for my athletes, the only deadlift variation we would probably do is really well done Romanian deadlifts, which look a lot like really well done deficit deadlifts, which look a lot like rack deadlifts. So it'd be those big hinged deadlifts. The other ones have some qualities for your quads, especially the heels together and the hack. Others have hit people certain places and they just love it. So a little bit is going to be on you, Gary. You're going to have to figure that out on your own just a little bit. But when you find a deadlift variation you like, that's where you should start doing like the easy strength protocols with it. I prepared for the state weightlifting meet a long time ago by just doing snatch grip deadlifts and military presses. Now, that's not because I was really tight on time. This is back when my girls were young. And what I found interesting was that if I 5 days a week did snatch grip deadlifts, 2 sets of 5 days a week, got those military presses in, and I did ab wheel. So those were the 3 exercises I was using. And when I could, usually Saturday mornings, and it was Tuesday night with my friend Eric Aragon, I would go up and I would snatch and clean and jerk at Eric's place. And on Saturdays, I often just went into my, if you ever see the cover of Never Let Go, I would Olympic lift in the alleyway next to the river, which was fun. And that's when I got my lifts in. So I was training 5 days a week with only 2 days a week Olympic lifting. And I went at our state meet, I went 6 for 6 and broke state records with my last snatch, my last clean and jerk, and the total. So you can really, deadlifts can make you very strong, but you just have to make sure it fits your specific anatomy, your goals, and your life story. Boy, that was vague, but I think it's a good answer. Thank you. We got a question from Justin. This one got here just in time. Okay, sorry. Can I please indulge in a easy strength for fat loss question? You may even cover this in the upcoming book that is already out, available at danjohnuniversity.com/bookstore, Justin. You often recommend that you have 1 day a week doing something that gets you sweaty, either your sport or a tougher conditioning workout. If you're doing easy strength for fat loss, do you still make this recommendation? If so, do you have any particular sweaty workouts you recommend for people who don't play a sport? Well, so I spent a lot of time talking with Pat Flynn. Pat Flynn's sweaty workouts would be these complexes where you do a series of kettlebell movements. I like it when the reps are the same, just because it's easier for me. But I don't know. You swing, the humane burpee. You swing, you gobble squat, you push up. You run through that. There's a great sweaty workout. Swing, gobble squat, push up. For the millionth time, let me answer it again. But here's the basic one: 15 swings, 5 gobble squats, 5 push-ups. 15 swings, 4 gobble squats, 4 push-ups. 15 swings, 3-3, 15 2-2, 15 1-1. If you want to make it harder, do 15 swings, 10 gobble squats, 10 push-ups, 9-9, 8-8. The original is 75 swings, 15 gobble squats, and 15 push-ups, and that harder one is 150 swings, 55 goblet squats, and 55 push-ups. That's a get sweaty workout. Now, and then in our gym, we do those barbell complexes. Today, my discus thrower was doing one we call just snatch complex. Not a very sexy name, but that's what it is. She was doing 5s in the snatch grip RDL, followed by 5s in the hang snatch, followed immediately by 5 overhead squats, followed by 5 back squats. And she's just coming off of a rest period, and she also just had her wisdom teeth taken out. So, it was, she was huffing and puffing and sweating pretty well. So complexes are probably my favorite in the gym style of get sweaty. You could also do something as old school as circuit train. You could also just take some dumbbells and put together just this long circuit of exercise after exercise after exercise. Where I'm pushing people more on the get sweaty workout, if you're doing easy strength for fat loss, is something we used to call the Great 8 in our training facility. It's a series of sprints. Now, the joke always was you start off slow and then you taper. You start off slow and then you slow down. But it doesn't matter how long you put, how long you sprint, but because most of the people I work with are not sprinters. You don't start from a start. You build up your speed. You start to accelerate. You start to accelerate. You hit something, either a tree or maybe a parked car or a cone, and then you accelerate, and then you hit the other marker, and then you decelerate long and slow. And the idea is then you come back, you go out, you come back, you go out, you come back, you go out, you come back, a total of 8 sprints. And I don't worry about rest periods. What I worry about is that you are accelerating and decelerating safely. If you have any kind of issues, like, and it could be just about anything, it could be joint issues, it could be weight issues. Oddly, backpedaling, backwards running is a great thing to do for this kind of conditioning. If you do backpedal, take an extra few minutes to look at your zone. Just keep an eye on if there's a pothole or something like that. Though if you're running backwards and hit a pothole, it's not nearly as terrible, at least in my experience, as the opposite. If you're doing this on a street, you don't always see the cars coming. There's certain parts of America I wouldn't recommend that. So you do 8. You maybe over time you build up the distance. Maybe over time you build up the intensity. But I like that. So I like the complexes, the humane burpees, Every book I've ever written, I've talked about these kinds of things. You could do the complexes with the barbell. You could just do old school circuit training, moving from exercise to exercise, exercise to exercise. I like the grade 8. And then the other thing that is probably a better idea for a lot of our listeners is just put on a backpack and just go for an extended hike walk. Throw your lunch in there. If you really want to get tired, throw your kid on top of that. Go for a hike. It's easy here in Utah to get sweaty because it's really hot and all of our mountains go straight up. When you go for a hike in Utah, it's straight up and then straight down. I mean, you see beautiful things, but you'll huff and puff by the time you get to the top. And interestingly, your legs are a bit sore from descending because of all those little isometric hits. I hope that helps. Do you need to get sweaty with easy strength for fat loss? I don't think it's a bad idea, but just don't overdo it, okay? Thanks, good question. Let those daily coffee, fast, exercise, walk, get your sleep in. Let those take care of most of it. But if you add it as a paprika or a cumin, I think it'll be okay. Good question. Okay, this one was one I didn't think much of when I first read it, but then I had a conversation with somebody, and now Douglas, it's a question from Douglas. I understand why people ask questions like this. I didn't understand at the beginning. I'm 33 and been using kettlebells for 3 years. Successful losing weight and gaining strength. Good for you. Excellent. My favorite movements are the double military press and loaded carries. I think we're a lot alike. Are there any long-term risks in my grip strength doing carries I should be aware of in the future? I do rack carries with 2x24 for 100 feet, turn around, front squat, then walk back. I have a workout called the Eagle. It's very similar to that. Then double 34 kilo suitcase carries only. What are the risks of loaded carries? Douglas, I've been around a while. I think you'd have to go out of your way to get hurt doing a farmer walk or a suitcase carry. I think you'd have to think it through. I remember I was at a kettlebell workshop one time and I was showing Pavel, John Duquesne, and somebody else, it might have been Brett Jones, this idea I'd come up with to just teach this particular movement in the Turkish get-up to make it a little bit smoother. And this person was so against the idea that they invented it right in front of us in real time, all these ways that this thing could go wrong. Basically, it was something Tim Anderson teaches us in Original Strength. I mean, it was one step from an egg roll. And the idea, though, was instead of doing an egg roll holding your knees, it was doing an egg roll trying to hold the horns of the bell and just keeping it here and trying to use your ab wall to drive yourself into the movements. Much easier to do than to explain, trust me. And this person just kept looking for ways to make this not work. And it would hurt people. I thought, here we go. I think loaded carries, and I think the benefit most people get from loaded carries is that it is, it really is hard to hurt yourself. Now, when I did the Pleasanton Highland Games, I made the mistake of doing their farmer walk challenge. Now, I think the weights are 165 pounds, but what makes it hard, maybe I'm exaggerating, I don't know, but I swear the handle was this thin. And one of the guys who'd been around said, oh yeah, you're going to do it without gloves? There's no way you can do it. And this guy had taken gloves and he had they were permanently bent like this with massive amounts of padding in here. I didn't know I could do that, but I wish I would have. But that thing pulled my hand so much that's the only time I've ever felt like a loaded carry hurt me. And it's weird because I felt it up here, like I felt like that had become a turkey leg on Thanksgiving, things were getting shredded. I really don't know of anyone who's been injured doing loaded carries, farmer walk or suitcase carry. I guess anybody can get hurt. Anybody can get hurt doing anything, but generally, one of the reasons I like them, it's like walking on a plank. A good way to train balance for adults is to put a 2x4 in the ground. And as they walk, if they step off, I don't have to say, hey, you stepped off. We call them self-limiting exercises. Jumping rope is another one. You don't have to say to somebody, hey, you caught that with your feet. You don't have to do that. In the Olympic lifts, I think the snatch is a pretty self-limiting exercise. When you keep missing it, it's probably a sign it's either your technique's off or you need to get a little stronger. But I like your question, and the most important thing I can say is, if you're doing suitcase carries, farmer walks, and these presses, I think, you're 33 and you've already had some success, but I can see the success going for a fairly long time. And thank you. That's a good question. Appreciate it. Okay, we only have, 2 more to go. So Joe asked this question. That's my granddaughter's name. Is there a way to optimize the benefits of the notorious muscle memory effect after a long 2+ years break from weightlifting? Considering programming and diet, I plan to use kettlebells. Background. Since I stopped powerlifting 2.5 years ago and mostly did long distance running and cycling after that. So powerlifting to long distance. I think that's kind of a good idea. I wouldn't want you to wait 2.5 years, between the two of them, but I wouldn't mind seeing you go 3 months of powerlifting, 3 months of, endurance, 3 months of 3. Might be a really interesting way to shape the body, not in terms of body mass, but to how the body reacts to things. I lost a lot of weight and strength. Unfortunately, I got injured while training for my first half marathon a few months ago. Hip injury. Gained a lot of body fat and would now like to get back to lifting, doing everything right from the start. Lose some fat I accumulated during my injury break from sports and build some muscle again. As I'm speaking, the book Easy Strength for Fat Loss isn't out yet, but boy, I got to tell you, I'd love to see you change your vision on how you power lift. But if you were to do bench, squat, deadlift, ab wheel, go for a walk, a bike ride, or a run, that's a pretty good little program in itself. I worry about this hip, and of course, I'm walking with you in a sense with this hip injury. I worry about this hip injury because, the exercises I just described, even the bench press, has an impact on the hip. Make sure you're cleared before you do anything else. Make sure that's feeling pretty good. For a while, I think walking is going to be your best friend, at least on the cardio and fat burning side, whatever you want to call that this week. The way you get rid of fat is by going, whew, in a sense, you breathe it out. There's more to it, obviously. But I like this idea, and you and I, Joe, we're kind of circling the same concept here. You want to lift weights and combine things. I want to lift weights and do a little bit more cardio restorative. My walks are as restorative as they are fat burning in my mind. I feel better after I walk. So if you've been off for a while, one of the things that's going to scare you is how quickly your strength will return. Heidegger's book, The Physiology of Strength, showed that strength comes back very quickly. And if you take another, say like you get back to your old numbers and then took another time off, you would even get back again even faster than this time. So strength comes back shockingly fast, especially if you're training, the way I train. It's reasonable, it's repeatable, it's doable. You're not smashing your face against the wall. You're not doing things that are going to impact your health and longevity. So I would love it if you would try an easy strength for fat loss approach. If your hip can handle it, I would love to see you do vertical presses. The nice thing about vertical presses, if you're standing up, I was doing after my total hip replacement, I was doing military presses within, days of that surgery. I'd like to see if you can do deadlifts. You're a power lifter. I would find a different variation than conventional deadlifts, and find one that doesn't have any impact on your hip, if you don't mind. Oh, Mr. Black just came by. Hi. Hi, buddy. When it comes to something like the vertical pull, pull-ups, chin-ups, and things like that, I think that'd be really good for you. Toss in some ab wheel and do a loaded carry for some kind and go for a walk. I think that'd be a good program. The thing I want you to keep in mind, though, your strength is going to come back very quickly. Just make sure you keep that within, just make sure you keep everything within reason, because not that I'm worried about you getting hurt, just that you're going to make really quick progress back up. And what happens sometimes, and this always happened to me when I would come back after injuries or whatever, look how, I'm lifting this, that, I went from here to here, then, I'm going to go to here and then here. And the truth is, you pop back up to about where you were and you maintain there for a bit. What I'd like you to do is build yourself back up to those strong levels again, but also mix with it the endurance stuff that's safe for your body and combine it together. I think we have a winning formula here. Thank you. Final question. Tim asks a question. He says, firstly, I just want to say thanks for all the great work you are doing with this site and the podcast over on YouTube as well. Hey, you're welcome. Thank you. I found them such an essential and invaluable resource. On the podcast, I've heard Dan say a number of times that if he were going to recommend just one set of kettlebells for men, it would be a pair of 20 kilo bells, 44 pounds. I'd love to know a bit more about that. Yeah, and Tim, it's just my experience. At certs, even when we bring in as people to be taught, people just off the street, friends, family, for men, almost universally, when they pick up the 20, it seems to be the right amount of weight. Now, the 20 is also the standard barbell weight, but it's just, this is something I've noticed in my experience, that if you have the standard beginner, so the 16, the 24, and the 32, that'll take care of most men I know, that'll take care of their single kettlebell, like goblet squat needs, their Turkish get-up needs just about forever, their kettlebell snatch. So most of the work of the kettlebell family is covered with the classic 3. But when it comes to doubles, a double 24s, it's only 8 kilos more than double 20s. I know that. But so many men I work with can't use the double 24s, but they can almost immediately use the double 20s. And that's what I started to pick up on when we do the armor building complex. That's 2 double cleans, a single double press, 3 double kettlebell front squats. A relatively new person can do that workout with double 20s. So it's just that number that seems right, okay? Is it perfect? No, of course not. But if you were to get the classic 3, the 16, the 24, and the 32, and then had double 20s, for most of the people I've ever worked with, you'd be covered, okay? So that's why. And obviously your mileage may vary. There's all kinds of people online who are, freakishly strong. When I do these certs, there's always that one guy who can, do a pull-up with a building strapped to his waist. There's always that one guy who can do all his presses. But for most men, and there'll be outliers who can't do that too, but for most men, the double 20s is just a great place for those double kettlebell front squats and double presses. Good question. Well, that was fun. Didn't get a chance to finish my delicious juice, but I will as soon as I let go of you here today. As always, if you have questions, send them to us at podcast@deadlift.com. danjohnuniversity.com. I'll do my best to answer them. I've got a busy couple of weeks coming up. The Inner Circle's kicking off again. danjohninnercircle.com. It's just an honor to work with these people, and I love doing it. And that'll be it for this episode 205. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. And until then, just remember, let's all keep on lifting and learning.